South Africa's automobile industry is warning that the impact of the KwaZulu-Natal floods on business will be felt for some time. Near Durban, the Toyota factory remains closed after suffering extensive water damage. Brand new cars will have to be scrapped. So how will the domestic automotive industry be operating from now on? Let's find out from Naamsa CEO Mike Mabasa. Mr. Mabasa, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure all of us, we saw those visuals, particularly here on eNCA when a helicopter was flying over that section of the Durban harbour with all those hundreds and hundreds of Toyota vehicles submerged in mud. Literally, things were really bad. So recovery-wise, how is it looking?
Well, but then we are obviously, counting the costs and looking at the impact of the floods. And obviously, the recovery programs have also begun. The cleaning campaigns are obviously at the final stages now. We are also currently assessing all the equipment that is used by the sector, particularly Toyota, because we're using very high-tech equipment in our manufacturing process, and most of that equipment, unfortunately, also was impacted very negatively and submerged. It was not just vehicles, but also the manufacturing process within the plant. So we are currently assessing all that, and some of this assessment will obviously take us much longer than we had anticipated because of the nature of the tests that we need to obviously do, because we need to be able to test each and every equipment we have one at a time, to be able to make sure that when we recommission some of that equipment back online, we are comfortable that that equipment is certainly ready to be able to help us to carry the work that we need to be able to do. And that work is likely, obviously, to take a couple of weeks to go in order for us to be able to be comfortable that we now know the magnitude of the size of this particular impact of the flood overall.
Yeah, just at a very simple level. I mean, I remember watching those visuals as my colleague Dasen Tatia was flying over that part of the harbour in Durban with the Toyota vehicles submerged in mud and water. Does it mean for each of those vehicles, for example, just at a simple level, Mr. Mabasa, has to be recleaned, or is it a goner? You have to build a new vehicle?
We are scrapping all those vehicles, Braden. So those vehicles will not be on South African roads. Those vehicles will not be exported out of the country. We take, obviously, safety of our passengers very, very seriously. Vehicles today, Braden, are computers on wheels. And once you have a computer or a cell phone submerged in water like we've seen, those vehicles, experiencing, we are certainly not going to take chances. So Toyota has obviously taken a very difficult decision to scrap. So we're not partially scrapping, we're completely scrapping all those particular vehicles, because safety of our passengers is sacrosanct, and it comes first, and we cannot take chances by recommissioning those vehicles back onto the system. Naturally, obviously, those vehicles will obviously impacted because customers were waiting for delivery of those vehicles, so those customers will obviously have to wait much longer in order for them to be able to get their vehicles on time.
Yeah, and that's going to affect the sales, because I saw the latest numbers for April. Toyota, for example, still leading the pack, and the numbers slightly up in terms of the units sold year on year, April this year compared to April last year. But with this kind of loss, with this kind of damage going forward, and people having to wait longer for their vehicles now, it's going to impact on the sales going forward.
There's no doubt about that, Braden. Remember, Toyota is the market leader in South Africa. They've been leading the South African market for the last 42 years. And the fact that, despite the challenges that they've seen with this particular flood, they were able to also lead the pack in the month of April. It really shows you the credibility, the tenacity, of the, systems that they have in place. But certainly, I think, the numbers in May are certainly going to be telling us a completely different picture, because remember that their operations have come to a grinding halt, and as we speak, even today, they are still not producing vehicles from the prospecting plant because of the cleaning up operations and testing all the equipment. And certainly we have no doubt They will certainly be activating different strategies to import vehicles that they can be able to get hold of from different other markets around the world. But certainly our numbers and our projection also as Naamsa for the month of May, we certainly project that it's going to be a very challenging month, absolutely.
Are they, in terms of the industry as a whole, because I would imagine the Durban harbour serves as a hub as well for imported stuff and exports, and that other vehicle manufacturers and people in the automobile industry are using that port. Who else in your space was affected besides Toyota?
Yeah, absolutely. So Durban Hub is obviously our biggest port of entry. We're currently using as a sector 3 hubs. Durban is the major one. We also have Gqeberha and also East London. But certainly in terms of all our exports, remember 64% of the vehicles that we're producing in South Africa today go out of the country as exports. We have 3 major vehicle producers in Gauteng, BMW, we have Ford Motor Company, and we also have Nissan. All those 3 are currently using the Durban port as their channel to be able to export the vehicles that they are actually producing. I mean, you take, for an example, BMW, 97% of the X3s that we are producing in Roslyn, 97% of those are moved to Durban so that they can be able to go to Europe and many other markets. Because South Africa, we are currently sending out vehicles to more than 152 different markets around the world. And all those vehicles and obviously all those markets were also impacted upon because the delays we've seen obviously from Transnet, during that particular time also impacted our capacity to be able to move some of those vehicles as quickly as we would like to. And similarly also imports and vehicles that are coming into South Africa because we've got 48 brands in South Africa that are trading in different models. And all those brands, many of them are using the Durban port. So the impact has been quite very significant. And that's why we are working closely with all those brands to be able to really quantify and understand the impact that it has had on each one of them. And I think May is going to be giving us a very good picture in terms of how the impact has been for them.
I know you said it's still early, you're busy assessing and to quantify the damage, but one just listening to you is going to run easily into billions of rand, but also the period it's going to take to recover. Mr. Mabasa, how long? I mean, you don't have the luxury of time. You've got customers who are waiting for the vehicles, as you say, but you need to make sure that safety comes first, that the product is top-notch when it rolls out of the production line, either for export or for local use. How long do you think, realistically, it's going to take for you to recover to pre-floods period?
Well, look, we are very comfortable, Braden, that mid-May, in the next 2 weeks, we'll certainly be in a position to at least get some resemblance of normality back, particularly from the vehicle sales point of view. Because remember, even if we have our local domestic plants impacted, like for example, Toyota, you still have, because we are working in a global supply chain environment, you are certainly able to, depend on other markets around the world who are producing pretty much the same types of vehicles that can be able to be commissioned and brought into South Africa so that we can really be able to make sure that customer needs are actually dealt with as quickly as possible. We also had some stock, available, and we are also obviously trying to push the available stock that we have in our dealership network so that we can really be able to make sure that customers are not inconvenienced far longer than expected. So we are doing obviously everything possible to make sure that we are able to get our systems back to normal as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you very much. That's Mike Mabasa. He's the CEO, that's the boss himself, of Naamsa, the National Association of Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa.